Any other questions?
About Christianity.
Or the topic?
Any topic? No.
Going once? Who?
Joseph, yeah.
So, here's another thing since Joseph is there. I want to say right now, the Christians obviously feel a lot of sympathy for the state of Israel. And rightly so, given the history. But the Jews around the world need to call out this right-wing shift that is happening in Israeli politics. Because the Israeli state and sections of the Israeli community are increasingly being hostile to the church in Israel. One of the things that meant that Christians should support Israel is because Israel has and still does for now treat Christians in Israel better than any Muslim country around it. But if Israeli extremists gain further control and influence over the Israeli state that results in greater persecution of Christians inside Israel, the one thing that made Israel stand out from the Muslim world around it and look better will have been spent. And then we Christians should see Israel in the same way that we see any other Muslim society. So I pray that all of you Zionists and all of you Jews that care about Israel should combat the increasing persecution of Christians inside Israel.
He's not agreeing with that. Joseph.
And he's dogging on Israel. And it's interesting because beautiful. For 2,000 years, Christians have put us to the sword. For 2,000 years. Unless we converted to Christianity, those that bended the knee and apostated and converted to Christianity, those that did that were still by the Christians.
Honestly, there's no debate here because we're going to agree with one another.
Now, there is one country, as Bob quite rightly said, in the entire Middle East where Christians are free to be Christians. And preachers like Bob, my good friend, will come to Speaker's Corner and jump
churches all over the Middle East, Palestine and Jordan. There's churches that are
one Jew will say something about Christians. Because one Jew will do something negative. When Christians, my brothers, in synagogues in America, I don't start dogging on Christians and say, Christians,
this is a new dynamic. I like this. I want
stop sniffing because I recognise these are one or two individuals. This is not representative. There are hundreds of churches in Israel. Millions of Christians pray in Israel every single year. To attack Israel as if it's persecuting a protected minority is an injustice and a distortion of the truth.
Tell us about the Christian report.
So let's just be clear, ladies and gentlemen. I agree with nearly everything you just said. I want to point out that Christians inside Israel are treated better than Christians inside Palestine, are treated better than Christians in Syria, are treated better than Christians in Lebanon, are treated better than Christians in Egypt. And all of those Muslims that attack Israel and try to use the plight of Christians to marshal sympathy for sick Islamist movements like Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad are seeking to manipulate the sufferings of Christians. However, Joseph jumped on the wrong end of the stick because I'm not attacking Israel. I support Israel's right to exist. I support Israel's right to defend itself against sick jihadi scum like Islamic Jihad and filthy trash like Hezbollah and dirty dogs Like, name another one.
ISIS.
Yes, like Hamas. I support Israel's right to fight against those filthy animals, and I believe that anyone in this country that supports those networks should lose their citizenship and sent back out of the country to which they have chosen to come, because frankly, if you support Islamists, you're not welcome here. Take your filthy attitudes and go and live in the sewers that you have run from. But my support of Israel is not uncritical. My support of Israel is not unquestioning like Christian Zionists. Notice the triggered Islamists right there. Let's be clear. My support for Israel, which I have made very clear, is conditional. It is conditional that Israel remains a country in which Christians are better treated. And as a friend of Israel, and as a friend of Zionists like Joseph, I am simply sounding the alarm that right-wing Jewish parties are threatening the place that Israel has as a place in which Christians are well treated. And even though the attacks against Christians on Israel are done by minorities and not supported by the majority, unlike across the Muslim world, that therefore it should not be ignored, and that Jews like Joseph should be clear in their condemnation of attacks against Christians in Israel. Over to you.
Okay, so you come here, you speak about Muslim. It's a very common narrative. When one Jew does one thing in Israel, it's presented as this is a problem. This is a right-wing extremist government that's taking control. In Pakistan at the moment, they are tearing down churches.
Yes, they are.
Reading Bibles.
Yes, they are.
Attacking Christians.
Yes, they are.
In Israel, churches are getting government grants. They're getting tax relief. The Christians are a protected minority. Every year there are huge marches throughout Jerusalem. Listen, imagine this, people. And I'm going to go for the Catholics, and I'm going to go for the Saudis. Imagine, even today, over here, we've got thousands of Shia, thousands and thousands marching. Because this is a liberal nation. Israel is also a liberal nation. Every year, thousands of Christians, millions of Christians, fly in from all around the world and march through our Mecca. They march through our Vatican City, holding their wooden symbols that represent their religion and not ours. Do we spit on them? Do we attack them? Do we ban them? No. We welcome them. We welcome them into our country, and we welcome freedom of religion, freedom of expression. Now there is a very, very triggered Islamist to the right of me who believes it's his country. And in his section of the country, they don't have these marches. They don't have thousands.
That's right. Christians are oppressed in Palestine. Christians are persecuted in Palestine.
There's churches in Palestine.
Watching this video will be thousands of Christians who have been to Israel and experienced Jewish hospitality. They've experienced Jews opening up their house. And look how triggered. If it was under these people, there would be no Jews. There would be no Christians.
Let me reply. So now notice, I want Joseph to openly condemn acts of discrimination and attacks against Christians inside of Israel. And he hasn't done that yet. Now I know he's a good man, and I know he'll do it in his next talk. But if I was speaking to a Muslim right now, they would be flat out denying the persecution of Christians, just like the three Islamists right there are all doing right now. Despite the fact that Christians cannot practice their faith freely inside of Palestine, despite the fact that Muslims can't convert to Christianity inside of Palestine. However, let me be clear. Let me be clear. Christians in Palestine are suffering because of the security conditions that are imposed upon all Palestinians. Palestinian Christians are not given the right to attend to their holy places inside of Israel. Palestinian Christians are suffering under the security blanket of Israel. Jewish settlers are taking the land of Palestinian Christians.
Which ones?
Sometimes by deceit.
Name one.
I'm going to. I will. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear. I understand the difficult situation that Israel is in. The cause of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian people themselves has been hijacked by jihadi filth, of which we have a number of supporters right there. And those people have created a condition in which Israel cannot distinguish between Palestinian Christians and Islamist sympathizers and Palestinian Muslims who are sick and tired of the Islamists. But I want to appeal to Zionists and to Israelis that you should do better wherever you can to support persecuted Palestinian Christians inside of Palestine and allow them as much as you can to enter into Israel and to attend their Jewish festivals, and that you should prevent Jewish settlers from taking the lands of the Christians in Palestine, because the Palestinians are not a threat to Israel. It is the Islamists that are a threat to Israel. The Islamists that this little mob here support, who shoot rockets indiscriminately into Israel, not caring who they're going to. Islamists who come in with and seek to and buses. When were any of those Christians in recent years? How many of them were Christians in the past? This is not a fight, Christians, where we choose between Palestine and Israel. Christians, our side, the side that we are on, are the Christians in Israel and around Israel. We are on the side of Christians in Israel and Christians in Palestine. And so our support of Israel must not be uncritical, and we must join with Israel in its fight against Islamist dogs.
So, we're going to have a little history lesson. First, we are not on the side of Christians. We are not on the side of Jews. We are on the side of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Allah, God, Hashem. We stand for justice. We stand for what is right. Now we are going to have a history lesson about Christians in the land. The Christians that stood for justice and stood for the return of Jewish sovereignty to our ancestral land prospered in the land. Those like the Nashashibis that sided with the Islamists, with the jihadis, those that sided with those, unfortunately, found themselves on the losing side and have suffered the consequence of waging a war that they could not win. Now, very importantly, in Israel there is a city called Nazareth. Nazareth was a majority Christian city. It is still a majority Christian city. On the Palestinian side, there is a city called Bethlehem. It used to be a majority Christian city.
Yes, it was.
Under Islamist supremacy,
Correct.
it is now a tiny percentage.
Because Christians were driven from Palestine by Islamists.
And so, furthermore, when they accuse Israelis, when they accuse settlers of taking Christian land, it's the other way round. When Israel was first founded, most of the land, or a huge proportion of the land which they purchased, came from Christian Arabs, came from Lebanese Christians, Jerusalemite Christians. They came from the Greek church, the Armenian church. The land that the Jews purchased was more often than not from Christian Arabs. Jews do not take the land of Christians. Jews do not take the land of Muslims. Jews, for the first time in 2,000 years, give or take, are now sovereign in their ancestral land. And look how triggered they get when they hear that the Jew is no longer under the boot of the Islamists. Look how triggered. This gentleman with the nice long beard who looks very Sunnah started saying that I'm an atheist. There's no confusion here.
You are an atheist.
I'm not an La ilaha illallah. Say it
If you're going to
again.
let him in, I'm going to talk. Okay. You finish what you're saying.
I will debate the elderly gentleman later. For now, I'm talking with Bob. So I'll very quickly conclude. Israel's Christians are not under threat. Palestinian Christians are not threatened by Israel unless they take up arms against Israel. If you take up arms against Israel, you will lose. If you extend the hand of peace, we will willingly receive it and make peace with you. My final concluding remark would be, if the Palestinians put down their weapons today, there would be peace. If the Jews put down their weapons today,
There'd be genocide.
100%.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. The reality is, do you want to go and debate them? No, that's right. So I want to point out that he said that the Jews. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this.
You sold Jesus for the Jew, Bob. Well done. Let's talk about it. Sold Jesus for the Jew. Well done.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob.
Right.
You hate it when people make friends with Jews, don't you?
Hey, Bobby.
Let me give you an example of how the Armenian community feels inside Israel right now. The old city, which contains the holiest site, and I want to be clear, Joseph talked about Christians marching through the Jewish Mecca. Jerusalem is the Christian Mecca. It is a Christian holy site. It is the Christian holy city, along with Bethlehem, along with Nazareth, and along with other places. And after the destruction of Israel by the Romans in 70 AD, the Christians became the predominant people of the land. And they remained the dominant people of the land up until the 1900s, when Islamists began to butcher and persecute Christians and create an environment in which Christians could not live. And the Muslims, notice, deny it. But Christians remained even after the establishment of Israel in large numbers. Let me give you an example. Armenian Christians share in the old city's holy Christian sites, and they own a quarter tucked away in the southwestern quarter, which is home to 2,000 Armenians. However, due to a purchase that was done by an unseen Jewish buyer and a corrupt Armenian priest, 99% of Armenian land in the state of Israel has been sold to a Jew, an unknown Jew, which means that Armenians now are in a place where they don't hold and possess the land that they own, and it was sold corruptly. I do accept that Israel is a just state, better than any of the Muslim states around it, better than the Palestinian authorities, better than Hamas, better than Syria, better than Egypt, better than Arabia, better than Lebanon. But the Jewish state should reverse this sale as illegal. I want to read to you the BBC's website on the matter. Yes, the BBC. What has emerged is that some 25% of the Armenian quarter has been sold on a 99-year lease to a mysterious Jewish Australian businessman for a luxury development. That gentrification puts at risk the presence of the Armenian Christians in the Jewish quarter, and it was done corruptly. So I call upon the Jewish state and I invite Joseph to condemn this sale and to call for its overturn, its reversal, and for the land to be returned to the Armenians. And notice that the Islamists mocked the sale and mocked the plight of the Armenians, because the Islamist, like his prophet, believes in when Muhammad said that he would make sure that the Arabian Peninsula had no Jews and no Christians. And that is why, as Joseph rightly says, if the Israelis put down their arms, there would be genocide in the Middle East, and he's not wrong because of Islamist trash like this one.
Okay, very, very quickly. So the debate was, does Israel steal land from Christians? And Bob brought a case.
That was not the debate.
No, that's what you were responding to. It's not the debate. The debate is Israel. But you were responding to, you accused Israel of stealing land, or settlers of stealing land.
Settlers do steal land.
Yeah. And so the example he brought was of an Armenian priest selling land to
Corruptly.
This was a transaction. Now, I don't know the details of this, so I will go away and research it. I'll find out who's behind the organs. With the greatest respect, most of what gets printed on the BBC comes via political activists. It's activists that put these stories into the newspapers. So I would like to understand what land. You said 99% of Armenian land. I highly doubt that 99% of Armenian land in Israel has just been sold to a shady unknown individual. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I need more. I need to know, is it like the entire Armenian quarter? Is it the churches outside the Armenian quarter? Is it the land that the church owns? Is it an individual house? And then similarly, how was it able to go through? In Israeli courts, you need to have deeds to purchase land. There are huge legal disputes whenever there's a dispute over land. And Middle East Eye, I said Muslim Brotherhood, by the way. Bob's looking at a website, Middle East Eye, which is it's run by the Muslim Brotherhood, effectively. So it's not the greatest proof for me. With all due respect.
Ask him if Jesus came with Christianity or Jesus was
all the Islamists that are dying
I'll
to get
debate
into the
you.
conversation.
You'll run. I'll debate you. You'll run.
Jewish.
So
He was Jewish.
But closing thoughts, because we're going round in circles. There is one country. There is one country in the Middle East where Christians have complete security. And if there is an injustice and Christian land is expropriated by somebody acting criminally, there is a legal system and a mechanism to retake that land. There have been many, many court cases of such. One of the most famous ones includes the El Kurd family in Sheikh Jarrah. Sheikh Jarrah was built, the house of Muhammad Al Kurd and Mohammed Al Kurd was built on Jewish land. They've been in a 50-year legal dispute over who owns the land. it's not simply a case of a Jew can take a Christian's land, or a Jew can take a Muslim's land, or a Jew can take a Drew's land, or a Jew can take anyone's land. There is due legal process.
If I won't steal it, someone else will.
Yeah,
Jacob said
and I
that.
can,
It's individual.
so, and I can show you exactly why. What I can manipulate you.
Someone else will. That's what he said.
So I'm going to debate later about Jakob Fauci, but to keep it here for the purpose of everyone watching. Israel does not steal land. Land is purchased legally, or land that was inherited from the Ottomans, who basically, when they lost their empire, there was areas of state land which then came into the possession of the Israelis after the British fled. So in closing, Christians who dog on Israel, Christians who accuse Jews of persecuting Christians in the Middle East. This is a complete distortion. There was an example a couple of weeks ago where a Catholic monk, I believe, came to the Western Wall Plaza, and he was wearing a giant cross, and he was asked to remove it. This caused a huge stink amongst Christians. How dare the Jews tell the Christian to remove his cross? He's not harming anybody. What happened in the aftermath was that the Israeli government came out and said it's completely legal to wear a cross in that area of the plaza. In contrast, the Vatican has rules that you can't wear religious symbols that aren't related to Christianity in the Vatican. And heaven forbid, if a Jew wore a Magen David in Mecca, he wouldn't even pass the boundaries of the city because Jews aren't even allowed in Mecca. Never mind wearing religious symbols. So there's this huge double standard that's applied to Jews, which needs to end. Jews, Christians, we are your friends. Muslims, we are your friends. Christians and Muslims, we forgive you for the injustices that you've inflicted on us through the years. We forgive you. But stop dogging us.
Right, ladies and gentlemen. Right, ladies and gentlemen. So, the reality is that Christians do suffer from the Israeli settlement movement. They do suffer from that. I'll give you an example. He didn't like my earlier news source, so I'm going to read from this one. Same story. Mondovies.
Mondovies.
Yeah, Mondovies.
These are like hardcore anti-Israel.
Right? Listen, earlier last week, Israeli settlers in East Jerusalem, accompanied by Israeli police, forcibly evicted a Palestinian family from the land they have leased from the Greek Orthodox Church since the early 1900s. The property, about 1.2 acres, is located just outside the walls of Jerusalem's Old City, beneath Al-Aqsa Mosque, and immediately adjacent to the Pool of Siloam, which it turns out, thank you, is currently ground zero for the State of Israel's work to extend the reach of the City of David's National Park. On December 27th statement on its website, now notice this is from the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate, so hardly some right-wing media organisation, and hardly, brother, please stop feeding him. Please stop feeding him. Brother, just ignore him. Just ignore him, brother. Please. He's feeding off your energy. Right. Don't feed him, brother. Just ignore the troll. On December 27th statement by the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem, which condemned the storming of its land today. So the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate condemned the State of Israel's occupation of the Church's land by an Israeli radical group that has no right or judicial backing in their favour to allow them to enter and occupy the land. So quite contrary to what Joseph said, and without appealing to some alt-right news source, the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate condemns the activities of settlers for stealing whose land? Church land. The land that belongs to the church. Now, Christians, I agree completely. I agree. Please, bro, stop or take your camera away. Brother, Seriously. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear. I agree with Joseph that Christians are better treating Israel than any Muslim country in the entire world. Any. I would choose to live in Israel than anywhere in the Muslim world, because Christians in the Muslim world are always treated worse.
You think the settlers will have you?
Using the example of wearing the cross that Joseph gave you. Remember the outcry that happened recently when a footballer entered the Saudi Arabian peninsula wearing a cross, and the outcry that Muslims felt and made because a Christian was inside Saudi Arabia displaying a cross. But yet in Israel, they backed the Christian who wore the cross. So I am agreeing with Joseph that Christians are better treated by the Israeli state than in Muslim world. I am simply appealing to a friend who has not yet done it to condemn the increase in harassment of Christians, to condemn the corrupt sale of Armenian land, and to condemn the seizure by force of church property, all of which have occurred in Israel. And as of yet, Joseph has not done it. I still believe he's a good man. I still believe he would, because he's still better than these two Islamists here who would only ever deny anti-Christian pogroms. They would only ever deny the murder of Christians, the rape of Christians, the of Christians. They would only celebrate the butchering of Christians. Look at how they smile and salivate at the very description of these things, because their heart is twisted, their heart is dark, and that is why we must oppose them. That is why we must create a state that would push these people out of our country. Go on, Joseph.
What Bob's done without realizing, this here is my manor, this here is my garden, my yard, and he stepped into my yard and started talking about things I actually know about now. So he mentioned a city, a place just outside the old city, just underneath Masjid al-Aqsa. He mentioned the place in Arabic is Silwan, in English it would be the garden, in Hebrew it would be the Garden of Solomon. It's a very, very, very important Jewish site. Now this is a picture of the land. I'll show Bob just so he can see it. In 1917, for those watching, go to the Israel Advocacy Movement, my channel, and type in the truth about Silwan. And what I can do, I can now play Bob a video, and that's, look, what's happening to this land. This is 67, this is when Israel unified the city of Jerusalem in 67, and from 67, what was a protected garden suddenly saw a massive Arab building on it. What happened was, under the Jordanians, when Jordan conquered Silwan, when Jordan conquered the garden of King Solomon, nobody dared build on this garden. When Israel liberated and reunified the city, suddenly there was huge. In 1844, Jerusalem was a majority Jewish city. When in 1948 they were driven out of the city by the Jordanians and the Palestinians. So when the Israelis liberated the city and opened it up for all people and all faith, we suddenly saw massive construction, illegal construction in Silwan. This is the land in question. This was never owned by the Armenian Church. You've read from Mondavise, which is an anti-Israel, it's a Jewish anti-Israel platform.
No, I didn't. You're wrong. Platform. I read from the Greek. Firstly, I never said it belonged to the Armenians. I said it belonged to the Greek Orthodox Church, and I didn't quote. I quoted the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate, who claim the land and who have disavowed Israel's actions. So, Joseph, you need to get your facts right. It's you arguing against the Patriarchate
Silwan was never Greek land. It was public land. It was a public garden.
You stole Arab land. You left get
I'll debate you
Palestine.
later, sir.
You left Palestine 2,000 years ago.
Jewish,
You
we
left
never
Palestine
left. We never left your history.
2,000 years ago. And then you come back and you say it's our land, our
Just keep
land.
talking.
You stole
keep
Arab
going, bro.
land.
Just keep going.
You stole Arab land. You stole Arab land. You stole Arab land. You stole
Look
Arab
how
land.
triggered
You
they are
stole
that the
Arab
Jew
land.
is no longer under their foot. No longer
You
under their
stole
foot.
Arab
No,
land.
they're not making that
I
jizya
am
and
Messiah.
they're angry.
You are liar.
They are angry that
I
they're
am
not making
Messiah.
that.
You are liar.
I'm happy that I'm not paying the jizya. I'm ecstatic that I'm not paying the jizya.
I'm also happy that I'm not paying the jizya. And that's the point, ladies and gentlemen, is these Muslims would have all Christians and Jews as second-class citizens.
In Israel.
They would make us all
This is a very
second-class
important
citizens.
point.
Stole
This is
Arab
an
land.
important point.
You stole
In Israel,
Arab land.
Jews,
You
Christians,
stole
and
Arab
Muslims
land.
pay the
You
same
stole
tax.
Arab land.
Jews, Christians, and Muslims
stole
pay
Arab
the
land.
same tax.
You
Under
stole
Islam,
Arab land.
Jews and Christians
You
pay
stole
tax to be
Arab land.
humiliated.
Ladies and
liar.
gentlemen,
You
I want to
stole Arab
speak
land.
up
You
again
stole Arab
for
land.
Palestinian
You
Christians.
liar. I'm
Because
Messiah.
as
You
Christians,
liar. I'm
our
Messiah.
fight, our choice as Christians is not between supporting Israel or Palestine. As Christians, our only solidarity is towards the church against all those that persecute it. So I want to read from The Guardian, ladies and gentlemen. The Guardian, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm supporting. And what I'm sad about is that despite numerous invitations, Joseph has not yet condemned the harassment, the illegal sales, or the abuses of Christians in Palestine. Inside of Israel. On the contrary, through this entire discussion, despite my belief that he will condemn.
Can I just jump in there? Can you say that? I have no issue condemning any Jewish extremists, whether they persecute, whether they target Christians, whether they target Muslims, whether it's a few months ago, there were some Jewish extremists, and they were almost certainly Jewish because they had tzitzit and a kippah, and they knocked over some gravestones in a Christian cemetery in Jerusalem. Absolutely condemn them. No issue condemning that. What I am objecting to is when extreme edge cases like that are presented as if there is an pandemic-like problem in Israel where Christians are being persecuted. There are Jewish extremists just like there are Christian extremists, just like there are Muslim extremists. Every community has its extremists. But in our country, those extremists are knocking over gravestones, and that's tragic. But they're not burning Christians. They're not torturing.
Like they are in Pakistan, like they are in Nigeria, like they are in Egypt. Everywhere where Muslims dominate, Christians are persecuted. That is a fact, ladies and gentlemen. However, the settler movement is leading to persecution of Palestinian Christians. And I have no shame in standing up for Palestinian Christians. Reading from The Guardian,
you know the history.
quoting a Jewish Christian family called Sahuri, along with others in the neighborhood, is under an Israeli demolition order. His family's home is under an Israeli demolition order, and he is a Palestinian Christian.
What's the area?
I'll finish. It was issued in 2002 after the apartments were built without a permit, which is almost impossible to get in areas of the West Bank under full Israeli military control. After protests, the order was frozen but not lifted. Sahuri, the Palestinian Christian, states, "It's like sitting on a bomb." His family has lived there in that place for 300 years. That was before the founding of Israel. That was his land. We don't know when it will be blown. At any moment, they could come with bulldozers and heavy machinery, and everything will be gone. But he adds gesturing across to Har Homa. The Israelis can build 1,000 homes in 3 months, in 10 years. They build a city while we have to build by stone by stone. Let's be clear, brothers and sisters. Palestinian Christians deserve your support, but don't confuse that with supporting Islamist dogs in Palestine. Don't confuse that with climbing in bed with the cause of Palestine that has been hijacked by filthy Islamist animals. Our support for Palestinian Christians can and should be given independently of the Palestinian cause, because Christians in Palestine are suffering under the settler movement, and we should not be silent about it because of some misplaced love of Israel. Our support of Israel should not be unconditional. Stealing Christian Palestinian land should be the condition, the red line that our support of Israel should not allow them to cross. Now you wanted the town.
Okay, town name?
Bear with me.
Har Homa is the Jewish one.
Har Homa, which is in East Jerusalem and the West Bank.
Perfect.
East Jerusalem and West Bank.
Fine. So again, Bob, you've stepped into my yard. This is my area. So, guys, take your debate over there. Do you want to do a Christian? So, very, very quickly, I would encourage everyone that's watching this, type into Google, Jerusalem, East Jerusalem even, 1945, 1925, 1955, type different dates and look what was there. And then look at East Jerusalem today. We just gave you an example from East Jerusalem of Silwan, where under Israel, the Arabs went on a mass construction drive. Entire neighborhoods were built. All of the hills around Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, used to be barren. There were no houses. Today, they are huge Arab neighborhoods. Now, Bob, I don't know if you are a homeowner, but I'm sure either you or your family own land in the UK. Maybe you even have a relative who's owned a plot of land, a farm in Sussex or something, for 300 years. If he were to illegally build a house on that land without planning permission, it would be pulled down. This is simply what Bob is bringing. A building was built illegally. No land has been stolen. The illegal construction has been taken down.
It's illegal because the state of Israel will not allow the Palestinian Christians to build on the land.
So again,
what are they supposed to do?
Explain what I just.
And
Bob,
firstly, the settlement is illegal.
Bob, I didn't interrupt you. But if that is the case, explain how Silwan was nothing but gardens in 1967, and then from 1967, which was the point that Israel was in control, an entire Arab neighborhood, which is now central, is probably the area we're talking about here, is now under dispute. How was an entire neighborhood built?
That was not my point. My point was that the Jewish state seized land owned by the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate.
Which land?
We've already talked about
Silwan wasn't, we said, Silwan was not Greek land.
That's your claim.
Okay, you have to prove me wrong, and I can show you whose land it was. It was the Ottoman state land. We literally, that's why there was no one.
It was owned by the Greek Orthodox Church during the time of the Ottomans.
Silwan was not.
Prove it.
Okay.
But bro, to be honest, I wasn't trying to debate you.
Because I can.
But what, you know what makes me sad?
I can tell
Joseph.
you. I can actually tell you who.
Joseph.
2 minutes. I can't remember which of the Rothschilds, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the Rothschilds that actually purchased the land legally in the pre-state period. So Ir David, the city of David, which is in this area, which is King David's city, the ruins of King David's city, it was a legal transaction. It was the land was legally purchased. That particular part, which sits above Silwan. So you have to show me who the Greek. You can't just say the Greek church. You have to say which land and like which property, and then we can go through the court case.
So you think the Greek Orthodox Patriarch is lying?
I think they're highly politicized in Israel. I'm not going to say they're lying. I'd have to see what they're claiming before I say they're lying.
Yeah.
But
look, Joseph, your condemnation of your condemnation of extremist Jews is better. If I had tried to talk about Muslim persecution of Christians, all that these Muslim Islamists would have done is try to obfuscate, try to whitewash. At least Joseph is willing to condemn extreme Israelis.
But it's also,
however,
it's most Israelis.
and I agree, I know. But my last point, because I think we should stop, because I've got better work things to do, and you so do you. And we need to meet up for a drink, by the way. But the fact of the matter is, what I'm trying to say, remember, I'm speaking to you as a friend, and the words of a friend, even if they hurt, the words of a friend are for your better. They're not words of an opponent. I've stated on record, I believe Israel has the right to exist. Stated on record that Israel has the right to defend itself. But what I'm trying to say to you is that Israel needs to do better in separating out its treatment of Palestinian Christians from its treatment of Islamists. Israel needs to do better in making sure that extremists don't capture the narrative inside of Israel, because it has taken a political shift to the right that would result in increased hostility and persecution of Christians inside of Israel. These are not the words of an enemy; these are the words of a friend.
So I would say one thing. I'll come back to it. I think most of what you're saying is filtered through anti-Israel activists. Like a lot of the information you're getting is from anti-Israel activists. People who have a dog in the race.
Should I filter my information through Zionist media instead?
Both. I think it's the only way you'll get the truth if you go through both.
My point is that getting my information from you as a Zionist means that I'm receiving. You haven't got a dog in this race.
No, I've got a huge dog in this race, and I have a huge bias, and as you can clearly see,
So does the Greek Orthodox Patriarch.
But what I was trying to say, and very, very briefly wrap it up, is it's somewhat hypocritical for you to take umbrage to Israel's move to a more religious government. It's not religious, it's still completely secular, but there is greater religious representation in that government. Because that's the very thing that you would want for this country.
No, you falsely accused me of something there.
No, you said that Israel's move to the right.
Israel's move to the right has led to an increased hostility to Christians in Israel. Do you agree or disagree with the idea that a corrupt sale of Armenian land that was sold by a corrupt priest without the agreement of his patriarch should be overturned because it was done underhandedly?
So first and foremost, if the patriarch didn't own the land and if the priest did own the land, then there's nothing wrong with that.
I believe that the patriarch owns the land.
Then it will get challenged in court and the land will get given back to the patriarch.
Good. This is why me and you get along, because you have a sense of justice, unlike the Islamists in this part. Yeah.
And so just a closing thought for me is, don't trust what I say, don't trust what Bob says, don't trust what everybody says on this conflict. What you have to do is read as many sources as possible, because somewhere between all of this is the truth. There are extremists, a very, very radical fringe in Israel, who do harbour prejudice against Christians, but they're a fraction of a fraction, they're a minority of a minority. There is, and I actually am on this side, there is opposition to proselytizing to Jews on the street. I'm for freedom of religion, but I'm not in favour of people actively trying to pull Jews away from Judaism in our country.
But would you make it illegal?
No, I wouldn't make it illegal.
That's
but
why
I think it's distasteful.
I don't mind you being seen it distasteful. I don't mind you arguing against it.
I think it would be distasteful for me to go to the Vatican City, set up a stall, and start saying, "You guys are worshipping the Trinity, return to Hashem, return to God." That would be an offensive thing to do.
We never left Hashem.
Never left Hashem. Next week.
Right. But
Christians have every right to live in the land, have every right to visit the land, and Jews, the majority of Israelis, will continue to speak out against
do you
those that
believe that Israel should make a differentiation in its attitudes towards Palestinian Christians versus Palestinian Muslims?
I think Palestinian Christians and Palestinian Muslims should be treated the same, which is fairly and without prejudice. I think extremist Christians who side, so for instance, there were Christians who fought against the Jews in the
war?
in the War of Independence. Yeah,
I mean, that's a war.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
They're not terrorists.
That's what I'm saying. No, I mean, there were Christian terrorists, but ignoring that, what I'm saying is, if a Christian picks up arms against Israel, then it's on them. They're an extremist and they will be dealt in the same way as a Muslim that picks up arms against Israel. But if neither the Muslim or the Christian picks up arms, they should be afforded every single protection that the law can possibly offer them.
Okay.
And there should be no difference between how a Jew is treated either. All three should
Right. And my final word is simply this. If you're a Christian, don't fall into the trap that this is about supporting Israel or supporting Palestine. As a Christian, we support the church, and we support the church only. That means that we have to support the church inside of Israel and outside of Israel. Now, given the fact that of the Islamist narrative and the reality of the Islamists, it means that we should support Israel in its fight against Islamists, but we shouldn't support Israel uncritically as Christian Zionists do, because that is an error. It isn't in keeping with the faith. And as friends of Israel, we shouldn't be frightened of saying to Israel when Israel is making a mistake or when Israel is not alert to the dangers to Israel's own existence coming from extremist Jews. Okay, let's make for a drink. God bless you.